Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this planning subcommittee meeting. My name is Barbara Blake. I'm the chair of this committee and I am a Seven Sisters ward councillor. So if the committee can introduce themselves, starting with Councillor Rice, please.
Thank you, Reg Rice, councillor for Tottenham Hill and vice chair.
Sean O'Donovan, Tottenham Hill councillor as well.
Dunstall, Stroud Green councillor.
Cathy Brennan, Muswell Hill councillor.
Nicola Bartlett, West Green.
Amina Ibrahim, councillor for Knoll Park.
Luke Corley Harrison, councillor for Crouch End.
Councillor John Bevan, Northumberland Park.
Thank you. And if I can ask the officers to introduce themselves, starting on my left, please.
Cody Sprott, Principal Committee Coordinator.
Justin Farley, Legal Officer.
Rob Szosowski, Assistant Director for Planning, Building Standards and Sustainability.
Robbie McDocker, Head of Development Management and Planning Enforcement.
Richard Truscott, Design Officer.
Suzanne Kimman, Climate Change Manager.
Thank you. And other officers they will introduce themselves for their item, and officers that are in attendance virtually will introduce themselves when relevant. So we're on item 1, which is filming at meetings. This meeting is being recorded. All registered speakers should be aware that they will be recorded for live or subsequent broadcast via the council's internet site or by anyone attending the meeting. Item 2, which is the planning protocol. Members and speakers are requested to note the information set out at item 2 on the agenda. Item 3, apologies have been received from Councillor Emery. So Councillor Corley Harrison, who's already introduced himself, is in attendance as his substitute. Item 4, there are no items, which is urgent business. There are no items of urgent business. Item 5, declarations of interest. So do members have any declarations of interest? So Councillor Bevan.
Yeah, I'm on a group that meets Spurs on a regular basis concerning the operational aspects of the stadium, along with other councillors and local residents, but I have not commented or expressed any opinion on this scheme. Spurs scheme.
Councillor Ibrahim.
If John's...
I think you're Councillor Jameson.
If John's referring to the BCLG meetings, are you? Then I attend those meetings too.
Okay, and you haven't commented on the application or?
No.
No, okay, thank you. Councillor Ibrahim?
Yes, regarding item 9, I hold an Arsenal Football Club membership and I am a member of IESA, which is Arsenal Independent Supporters Association. I will be viewing the item with an open mind.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. So item 6, So sit down. It's okay. Let's just blow in a bit. Sorry? Turn off. Yeah.
Apologies for lateness. Alex Worrell, councillor for Stroud Green.
Okay, thank you. So we're now on to item 6, which is minutes of 11th of May, 5th of June and the 3rd of July. They're in the supplementary pack. Do we approve those minutes? Yes, thank you. So we're now on to item 7, which are the planning applications. And at item 8, the first one is Hornsey Police Station. I won't read out the proposal, that's set in the pack. The recommendation is to grant. There are no objections to this item, but the applicant team, Chris Boyle from, how do I pronounce that? Sorry, Arcaneum, is available to answer questions from the committee, but I will hand over now to Valerie O'Kane to introduce the application. So over to you, Valerie, please.
Thank you, Chair. The proposal is for the retention of the existing police station building, Block A, with internal refurbishment, rear extensions and loft conversions to create 6 terrace houses and 4 flats, erection of 2 buildings comprising of Block C along Glebe Road and Harold Road to create 8 flats, and erection of Block B along Tottenham Lane and towards the rear of Tottenham Lane to create 7 flats and 4 mews houses, including landscaping and other associated works. This site is occupied by the former and now redundant Hornsey Police Station, which is highlighted in red, located on the corner of Glebe Road, Harold Road and Tottenham Lane. Immediately north of the site is the row of terrace houses fronting Church Lane. The fireman's flats front onto Glebe Road and backs onto the northwest corner of the site, and Tottenham Lane Local Centre is located immediately east of the site. This is an aerial view of the site looking west and east. The police station is not statutorily or locally listed, but it is located within the Hillfield Conservation Area, which also includes all the other properties on Harold Road, but no other properties or spaces on Tottenham Lane, Church Lane or Glebe Road. The site, and in particular the former police station, is considered to make a positive contribution to the streetscape and wider conservation area. This is a view of the existing building along Harold Road. The existing building comprises a part 2-storey, part 3-storey building, and this slide shows the long lower wing fronting Harold Road. This is a view east along Harold Road, showing the existing vehicle access. This is the corner of Tottenham Lane and Harold Road. And this is a view into the car park. And you can see the fireman's flats behind the existing boundary wall of the site. This is a view from Tottenham Lane and Church Lane. The proposal is for the conversion of the existing police station, Block A, to residential, and the redevelopment of land around it, Block B and C, to create 29 flats, houses in total. Block A includes refurbishment, extensions and loft conversions to create 6 houses and 4 flats. Block B is new build and will be 3 to 4 stories in height to create 7 flats and 4 mews houses. Block C is also new build and will be 3 stories in height to create 8 flats, and the dwelling mix comprises 6 1-bed, 11 2-bed, 8 3-bed and 4 4-bed units. The proposal includes affordable housing comprising of 8 London affordable rent units, which equates to 19.4% by habitable room. And the proposal also includes communal amenity space, child play space, private amenity space, landscaping, a secure disabled scooter store, cycle parking, and residents can also apply for designated on-street blue badge parking bays. The considerations include principle of the development, affordable housing, heritage impact, quality of design, quality of accommodation, landscaping, impact on amenity, transport and sustainability. This is the proposed block plan. Block C, which is the new build, is in blue on the corner of Glebe Road and Harold Road. Block A, which is the building to be retained and refurbished, is in green along Harold Road and Tottenham Lane. Block B is in orange along Tottenham Lane and along the new Mews Street. This is the proposed ground floor plan, and each block will have their own separate communal entrance, with the houses in Block A and Mews houses of Block B having their own separate private entrance off the street. The houses in Block A share a communal bin store with Block C in between Blocks A and C. The Block A flats have their own bin store on the corner of Harold Road and Tottenham Lane, and the Mews houses in Block B share a bin store with the Block B flats. Each block will have its own dedicated cycle store, and the houses of Block A and Block B will have separate secure cycle stores. A secure disabled scooter store for each of the wheelchair accessible units are located within the new Mews Street. And the communal garden area is proposed centrally for the dwellings and include 141 square metres of informal child play space for 0 to 11-year-olds. And each house within Block A and B would have private amenity space on the ground floor, including some of the ground floor flats. I will now focus on one of the key issues. In terms of principle of the development, the police station was closed in March 2021 and sold to the developer as part of the Metropolitan Police Service rationalisation and investment programme to reduce costs and provide modern new facilities to support future policing around London. The police station is defined as a community facility, and its loss meets the requirement of policy DM49 as it forms part of a wider strategic Metropolitan Police Service programme to dispose of existing police stations while not impacting on police services that are required to meet the needs of the local population. The new residential land use on the site in place of the former police station is an acceptable alternative use for the site, and the proposal will provide much needed contribution to the borough's housing stock. In terms of affordable housing, the applicant's economic viability appraisal was independently assessed, and it was found that the scheme can provide 19.4% on-site affordable housing by habitable rooms in the form of 8 flats for London affordable rent, prioritising low-cost rented housing, which has a greater impact on viability than other affordable tenures. London affordable rent is the main low-cost affordable rented housing the GLA currently expect to fund. An early and late-stage review mechanism will be secured by a legal agreement. This slide shows the tenure plan, with the London affordable rent units highlighted in purple, located in Block C. This slide also shows the wheelchair accessible units highlighted in brown. This is a view of Block A and B from Tottenham Lane. The proposed height of Block B on the Tottenham Lane frontage retains the primacy of the police station building. From a design point of view, the contrasting detailed design to the retained police station responds successfully to its rhythm and proportions, and the new block will be predominantly constructed using red brick to match both the existing police station and other neighbouring buildings. This is a view of Block B and the Mews houses along the new Mews Street. Note how the Mews houses follow the same form as the main block, which fronts the street, and it steps down in height gradually as the Mews Street gently slopes down. This is a corner view of Block C. Block C is a minimalist design of a modest height of 2 stories, constructed using red brick with a slate roof to match the police station. This slide shows the front and rear elevation of Block A. The converted police station building is a sensitive conversion to the front and side facing the street, with existing doors and windows retained and refurbished and new doors inserted where required. Whilst the rear of Block A has a greater modification to replace existing outbuildings and lean-tos, the new build elements at the rear are detailed simply and plainly and will not compete with the retained existing elements. The scheme has been through pre-application discussions with officers and the quality review panel on 2 occasions. In terms of impact on the conservation area, Block B of the proposal, from a conservation point of view, will lead to a very low, less than substantial harm to the significance of the conservation area and its assets. That is outweighed by several significant public benefits of the development. The remainder of the scheme is considered to preserve the character and appearance of the conservation area. And given the above, and the support from the design officer and the quality review panel, the proposed development in conservation and heritage terms is supported. This is the proposed first floor plan. All flats and houses are at least dual aspect, many triple, or with at least one sunny southerly or westerly aspect. A majority of the upper floor flats have private balconies. Due to the constraints of the site, it has not been possible to provide private balconies for every single dwelling. However, all homes would have access to the generous communal amenity space. This is a view of the proposed communal amenity space, which is accessed by all tenures. The proposed hard and soft landscaping will include permeable paving, amenity grassland, rain gardens, planters, trees, shrubs, green wall, hedges, and an intensive green roof. This is another view of the proposed communal amenity space, and you can see the private garden of the houses. In terms of impact on amenity, there will be no material impact on the amenity of nearby residents in regards to loss of outlook or privacy, and the impact of daylight sunlight is minimal. This slide shows the setback distance plan. In terms of privacy, the only existing residential neighbours in close proximity are the firemen's flats. There will be some overlooking between these flats and the new dwellings, but distances are generally reasonable. The rear projection of the firemen's flats is set back 8.2 metres from the side flank wall of the end Mews house of Block B, which have no windows in the upper floor of the side flank wall. The windows at first and second floor level, Block C, have a separation distance of 12.2 metres from the side wall of the firemen's flats, which contains kitchens or bathroom windows. Also, Block B to the rear is separated from the rear wing of the firemen's flats by 33.9 metres. In terms of transport and parking, the PTEL is 4, which is good. The scheme is a car-free development. Residents can apply for a designated on-street blue badge parking bay. This proposed arrangement comes from converting the police bays to the blue badge bays. Secure scooter stores with charging facilities for the 3 accessible units is proposed along the New Mews Street. 68 long stay cycle parking spaces and 4 short stay cycle parking spaces are proposed, and delivery and servicing activities will take place from the existing redundant police bay in Church Lane, and refuse and recycling stores are sited to face the highway for on-street collection. This is the Section 106 head of terms. Officers recommend the committee resolve to grant planning permission subject to conditions and planning obligations as set out in the committee report. Thank you.
Thank you, Valerie, very much. So do members have any clarification questions, please, for the planning officer? So Councillor Brennan.
So I simply don't understand why, when I've read in the papers things like on page 70, that it provides a convenient contrast with the style of the, I mean, I'm slightly paraphrasing. It says, the expression of contemporaneity contrasting with the prevalent local pitched roofs locally, on page 70. On page 77, the conservation comments, 28th of the 10th, they said, however, it's not considered the amendments to Block B, blah, 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 are sufficient to overcome concerns that the frontage may appear alien in its surroundings. I don't understand why more effort has been made not to make it appear alien in its surroundings. It's not that I'm not saying that I object to everything about it at all, but it does look alien. I can see a little statue there, and that's absolutely true to life. All the roofs are pitched all around it, and then it's sort of sitting there, a block. It would be great in another context, but it does seem out of context. And why has nobody picked that up and just tried to rework it?
Chair, if I could bring in Richard, our design officer, just to explain the rationale behind the design and its response to context.
Thank you. Yes. I consider that it is a good design. I consider that the detailed design concept for Block B, the weaving pattern and the flat roof and things like that, expresses that it's a modern building, a new building, but that it has elements that reference, call to, and allow it to fit in with the predominantly Edwardian surroundings, including, importantly, the police station. But the existing original police station should be the most important of the group of buildings, so it allows it to have a contrasting appearance and make the police station the most important of those buildings. It allows a 4-storey building to have a lower overall height than the existing police station, and it allows the weaving pattern with the projecting and recessed bays and so on, allows it to have a proportioning pattern on the elevation and a richness to the elevation that is similar to the surrounding other buildings, like the retail parades with their flats above and the terraces of houses along Church Lane, whilst also looking contemporary. I don't consider the flat roof completely out of context, though there are more pitched roofs than flat roofs in the immediate context. A lot of the pitched roofs, including the pitched roof of the main police station itself, is very shallow pitch, so you can barely see the pitched roof unless you stand well back from it. And there are other buildings in the vicinity that have a parapet with the pitched roof hidden behind the parapet. But it's all part of the rich variety that makes up the city in the area. And I think it will hugely contribute to the quality of the location, creating a sense of enclosure to that interesting triangular space. And I think it will complement the context without being a pastiche of the context. I would also point out that we could ask, you might well want to ask the same questions of the architect when it comes to their turn. But as I say, as your design officer, I consider it to be an excellent design.
Thank you. Councillor Bevan?
Yeah, on page 30, and that the QRP thing, it refers to block C, the palette being of colours and textures used as being too formal or too not appropriate, basically. Have we addressed that issue? It's on page 30. I can tell you the paragraph. Page 30, seconds from the bottom. So that's the first point. And then another point of general interest. Why is the life cycle on all these projects only 50 years? What would be the difference if we applied a 75-year life cycle standard to this and other projects coming forward? Because 50 years seems really short. Does it impact the financial ability of the developers, etc.?
Suzanne, do you have any views on that sort of whole life cycle carbon side of the building, and that, or is that something potentially for the developer to answer in terms of the long-term sustainability of the building?
Possibly, yes. Was there any specific reference in the committee reports that you were thinking about in terms of the life cycle, or is it?
It just says on page 47, designing for a longevity circa 50 years of building life. And with the issue of recycling and not knocking down buildings and all that issue, it seems a really short thing to design for. Surely we should be designing that the longevity is much longer.
Yes, that is definitely a consideration, and this building has probably already existed, obviously, for longer than 50 years. I think it's probably a question for the applicants on why they have made that assumption, but it's something we are seeing in a lot of assessments as an assumption.
And I suppose, ironically, the circular economy is about that longevity and that reuse. So that's what the London plan is asking for that 50-year life cycle, and I suppose it's looking at the ability to dismantle it easily at the end of that. So it's not just that you come in with a wrecking ball, that things can be unscrewed and taken apart and reused. But I don't know if that's a particular criticism we can level at this developer, that's what the London plan policy is expecting in terms of circular economy. I think there is a longer life cycle for buildings, but that's what the policy's specifically asking for, 50 years.
So the years then is mentioned in the London plan, is it? Specific?
Yeah, at least, yeah. So that's something that that this is setting out in terms of what it's putting forward. So it says to look at the life cycle of the building. I think actually reading it again, the policy doesn't insist on that 50 years. That's what the developers looked at. So they've they've looked to the future 50 years for this, and the disassembly at the end of that. That doesn't mean to say it can't last more than 50 years. It's just assessing those first 50 years and making sure it's sustainable in that respect.
Thank you, Councillor Warren.
Thank you. I am a little bit surprised that the proposed percentage of affordable housing is so low, particularly given because it's the sale of public land, it's subject to an even higher target of 50%. And I understand that that's judged to be because of viability. If I'm not mistaken, so I'm in Appendix 7 on page 179. If I'm interpreting the viability assessment correctly, it says, when compared to the benchmark land value of the site, which is 3.9-ish million, it's clear there is capacity for the scheme to provide additional affordable housing without impacting the viability of the site. So to clarify, is it because we've gone for London affordable rent that had it been a different affordable housing product, more could have been delivered, but absolutely no more affordable rent units could have been delivered? Can I check if that's the case? And also, yeah, I guess, are officers confident that the amount of affordable rented properties has been absolutely maximised? And also, why couldn't we secure a payment in lieu, given that the target wasn't met?
Yeah, so in terms of the paragraph you've read from this, so that's under the sensitivity analysis. So that's looking at what would happen if there's a 5% increase in values, and also looks at a 5% increase in costs and shows the sort of swing in terms of viability. So the applicant could be committed to this level of affordable and discover their costs go up, and actually that could drag down their viability if values go up. There's potentially a surplus. So at the moment, based on current values and current build costs, there's no further affordable housing could be delivered. There's a late stage review then to capture any uplift in value. Values aren't going that way at the moment, and costs are. So you sort of see the impact of these sensitivities can be quite significant. So we do have a method for capturing any additional value and securing a payment in lieu for that. In terms of the percentage, the applicant has proposed a London affordable rented unit, so we don't have a 10-year split of an intermediate product, so that takes the value down. So we've prioritised the low-cost rented units. There's generally less affordable housing in this part of the borough, and this is the greatest need, and there was practicalities in terms of fitting that into the site. So viably it probably could provide a higher percentage, but we feel this is the best affordable housing offer. The policy at 50%, is a target and a threshold under, and if you don't meet that, you have to do viability testing. So it's the same as if it was a 35% viability testing target. We have a viability report, and the evidence is in front of you, and it's found that it's not viable.
Okay, Councillor Rice. Councillor Rice.
Oh, thanks. In terms of parking, page 8 on the report, it talks about 10% parking. Why is it not a higher figure? Because this is a police station, and there's always a yard that goes with it, and in that yard they use your cell block, which was in this case. I haven't looked at it. Consider that there's plenty of room in the cell block there, in the yard aspect of it anyway, to accommodate much more figures of this. There's only 10% in terms of disability. Well, if you have a different disability and it falls in terms of numbers, more than 10%, you'll be 11%. What you going to do then? And Valerie talks about the dual aspect of the dwellings, and in some cases she said there was a triple aspect. I was just interested to know how you approach that. How do you get to the triple aspect in a flat? It seems a rather tall order.
Yeah, Chair, if I could pick up the parking issue first. So Here we go. The parking is provided in line with the London plan and with our own development management policies. This site is very accessible. PTOL is 4, and the policy is where we have a PTOL of 4 and above, we seek to have a car-free development. This development is a car-free development in line with our policies. We have seek to provide disabled car parking bays on street by way of a parking management plan, where now we have numbered bays. Residents can apply for numbered bays if they fit the disability criteria to have a bay on street. We've taken the approach, although it's not normally approach, that where the police station normally have a significant amount of cars parked on street, that this one have an impact on residents after looking at the car parking pressures and doing all the surveys. So the idea, Councillor Rice, is that we will provide 10% in the first instance, but if a residents move in and they have a disability and they qualify, they can apply for a numbered disabled bay to be provided on street.
Thank you for that. Councillor O'Donovan.
I have another question. My question is, how do you achieve?
Sorry, Councillor
triple
Rice,
aspect of this?
you asked a question about the aspects, didn't you? Sorry, yeah. So there are triple aspects as well as dual aspects.
It's not. Okay. Carry on talking. Window there, window there, and window there. This one has window there, windows there. This one, oh no, that one has a window there, and window there, right up there. So there are quite a few scattered around the scheme.
Are those all your questions now? Thank you. Well done. Councillor O'Donovan.
Okay, thank you. Well, initially or on the surface, this scheme looks very good. 29 dwellings and a good mixture of large properties, which people do need. 19 of those will either be 2-bedroom or 3-bedroom, and 4 will be 4-bedroom. However, if you look, following on from Councillor Wall's point, if you look at the affordable part of that, the figures are that there's only 1 3-bedroom, 2 2-bedroom. The whole development has 6 1-bedroom flats, and 5 of those will be in Block C, which is the affordable rent scheme. There's 8 dwellings out of 29, but as you said, if you look at the room percentage, it is at 19%. The report from the housing services are very concerned about that, whether that fits in with the council's housing strategy. They were looking much more to a figure of 40%. So that the affordable housing, and it's London affordable housing, is all in Block C. Block C, and I think it mentions that that Block C is constrained by its size, which is why these properties are smaller than in Blocks A and Block B. But then that begs the question, why is all the affordable housing put into one block that I think somebody described as minimalist, separate from all the other 2 blocks? I mean, I hope we're not getting into a point where there's a poor door and a richer door. And can that be?
Your question, Councillor. What your question is?
My question is.
Thank you.
What is? Well, I suppose the question is: can we extend the number of affordable properties in terms of their size, and why are all the affordable properties put into Block C? Thank you.
Yeah, one thing I can say is that the applicant has confirmed that they've been liaising with a number of housing associations who are satisfied with the proposed unit mix proposed for Block C. And obviously, as I said in the presentation, the site, Block C, is constrained due to its layout and orientation as well. So therefore, 1-bed homes maximise the space within the block and in turn maximises the level of affordable units.
Councillor Dunstall.
Thank you. We saw this at pre-planning, didn't we? And I think one of the things that I raised at that time was concern about refuse collection. From memory, it was going to be a third-party company that would do the refuse collection. Have I got that wrong? Or would it be it's council collection?
Yeah, it's the council.
Council. Yeah. So I'm just very aware of that specific bit of road, and we didn't really get any satisfactory answer at that pre-planning stage, and I can't see anything that's been done to address it, just around what that process will look like, because we've got 3 bin stores, and that specific piece of road, you know, if you've got a bin lorry stopping around there, that whole bit down Tottenham Lane is just going to be backed up in seconds. So I just wondered whether there had been any further consideration with regard refuse or not.
Yeah, sure. Chair, if I can pick that one up. So there has been discussion in relation to the refuse, and it's something that my team picked up. I think we've conditioned the service and delivery management plan as part of the suite of conditions. And the idea behind that plan is that there'll be some form of management on the day where they'll bring the bins to the truck and then return them back, because obviously we've got a maximum carriage distance. So we still have to discharge that condition. So we're happy to consult with the permission of the chair with yourselves when that document comes in with the full details. So the idea is that on that day, for that hour, someone will bring them out and bring them back. And I think it's quite common for some of these development where it's constrained and we can't provide that bin storage within that carriage distance.
Did you want? Sorry, Councillor Corley-Harrison.
Thank you, Chair. So I've got 4 questions. The first is the solar panels. This is referenced a number of times about a more detailed plan of the solar array, and it looks fairly sparse from the roof plan to me. So I'm just wondering whether that whether the detailed plans are as the roof plan or whether they're coming forwards. In regards to the courtyard, whether a wind impact assessment has been done on that, because Smithfield Square, which is not too far away, has a very similar courtyard and it's pretty bloody windy in the middle of it, even on a not so windy day. Just wondering whether that has been done. On the viability assessment, I'm just wondering whether you could offer some clarity on the late stage review. So from the figures, it seems like there's kind of 2 large changes, let's say, from the difference between the applicant's viability assessment and the independent assessment, and where they come together, and they seem to be on the residual land value and also the interest rate of borrowing. So I'm just wondering, when it comes to the late stage review, what is considered as part of that? For example, if the rate of borrowing, which is all over the place at the moment, wasn't 7.5%, which I'm sure that the developers would hope that it wasn't, would that be considered in the late stage review, or is it just construction costs, or, you know, basically what is it? And my final question is on the fact that it's a car-free development. Has the council not tried to push, considering it's car-free, for 278 contributions towards walking and cycling in the local area, because this is supposed to be part of a strategic cycle route. In fact, it's the TfL route or whatever it is, and this would have been an opportunity to actually make that route viable, I think, because at the moment, due to various things such as widths, it's not really viable, and it is quite a tight area for pedestrians and everything at the moment. Thanks.
Thank you. Is that 4 or 5 questions?
That's 4.
Oh, okay, all right.
Yeah, in terms of the wind assessment, in this instance, the proposed development's not tall enough. It's 4 and 3 stories in height, so it's not tall enough to have a wind assessment. No.
I think, Suzanne, did you want to come in on the detail of the solar?
Yes, the solar PV array was changed a number of times in terms of its capacity. The array was enlarged because there was additional roof space was found to be able to put the solar PV array on there. I cannot locate the updated roof plan though to double check that we've cross-referenced it. But what we have secured is the higher amounts of kilowatt peak for the solar PV array. And what we have also put in the conditions is to provide an updated roof plan. Yeah.
I'll just take the viability question. So, as I understand it, it's an assessment of costs and values. I don't believe that takes into account interest rates. So if they go up, that potentially isn't taken account of. But what I do know is that it's set out in the London plan, really. So we will follow that in the detail of the 106. So if the London plan allows you to include financial costs, then that's that will be included in the 106. So we just have to sort of see what happens in reality and what the London plan allows us to control. Yeah, sure. Yeah, there's a very detailed SPG in this, and it'll spell that out.
And then there was cycle routes.
Yeah, sure, Councillor. I share the point, and there's an ARCS, and it's full in our comments about feasibility. I think the applicant has agreed a contribution to that extent, and I'm just looking in the heads of term here where it's captured. But there was an ARCS, and it was agreed in terms of the applicant putting a contribution towards a feasibility for that cycle route.
Yeah, so on page 4, head of term
page 4,
3, final bullet point, 100,000 towards sustainable and active travel.
That's it. Specifically for that area? Not for that area.
Thank you. It does help if you can, when you're asking questions, if you can refer in the pack so that we can all look at the items that you're referring to. Thank you.
Well, I couldn't refer because I didn't know where it was.
Right. I'm just sort of reminding the committee. So, Councillor Jamieson.
Well, on that, I have to apologise because I had done written notes all over the pack on the computer and then lost them all. So I'm concerned about Block C. Like it's been described as minimalist. I'm sure I read that it was also described as plain. Then there was separate cycle secure areas for Block A and Block B, but you didn't mention C. And I'm wondering if the building is, all buildings, including Block C, are they insulated?
Yeah, so with regards to Block C, prior to, so this Block C was actually revised. Previously, it had an all brick roof and there was concerns that it was too plain. And then Block C was revised to include a slate roof so that it is more similar, fits in more with the police station. And so, yeah, so it's not plain in terms of its design. It's minimalist, but it's, you know, the roof also does help.
And yeah, Suzanne, if you could just comment on the level of insulation for Block C.
So Block C is covered by the new build standards for energy reduction. So it does include insulation to a high standard. I'm not sure, you weren't referring to the Hornsey Police Station building itself, right? Whether it was insulated. Okay, thank you.
And the cycle racks that don't seem to exist for Block C, because it does seem like it is the poor relation.
From memory, and I'll have to pull the plan up, there is a cycle park in Block C. It's in the corner near the refuge storage. But we'll have to probably get a plan up. But there is cycle parking in all the blocks.
And is it secure as the
it
others
is,
were?
it is secure. and it's just sheltered, and there is a condition requiring it to be fully compliant with the London Cycle Design Standards, which means they'll have to submit details of the layout, the exact layout of it in terms of the dimensions, and we'll have to approve that as part of the condition. But the numbers comply currently with the London plan.
Sorry, Chair. Yeah, so the cycle store, sorry, my presentation, I did miss out Block C, but yes, there is a cycle store, and this is the cycle store here. So it's in between the Firemen's Cottages, Firemen's Flats and Block C. Yeah. So every single block has a cycle store.
And can I just clarify that the one bedroom flats in Block C are 2 people, are designed for two people?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, all right. I want to, Councillor Warren, then I want to bring in.
Thanks. Just really quickly. So on page 11, could I just clarify what is meant by a comment in the quality review panel's comments, which says, the panel emphasises the importance to the scheme's success of carrying through the detailing to prevent its being subject to value engineering as it approaches construction. It's just a technical point. I couldn't really work out what that meant. And then on page 51, separate point about fire safety, at point 6.13.2, there's mention of the Muse Street service road to the north of development. It's not wide enough to be a fire service access road, and it's proposed to provide sprinkler protection. And I just wondered what that looks like in practice. I mean, clearly it's past the fire safety regulations anyway, so it's acceptable, but just what that means for that entrance. Thanks.
Okay, so going back to the panel's comment, with regards to high quality detailing throughout the scheme, a condition will be imposed that requires details and samples of all key materials and further details of design and detailing of key junctions, sills, head of windows, balconies and roof parapets, and that will have to be agreed prior to commencement of works on site. And that will be agreed by the design officer and our conservation officer. And there is a condition as well for architect retention as well.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Sorry.
Yeah, and I suppose just in terms of what value engineering means, it basically means cheapening down the design, so to save on costs really. So those conditions and the retention of the architect will secure that and ensure that the design quality is carried through. In terms of the sprinklers, so that will be in the residential properties at the far end of that Muse Lane. They will have a sprinkler system, so I think they're based on heat sensors rather than smoke detectors. So when if there's a fire in the flat, the sprinklers come on, and that dampens the flames and allows time for people to escape and for firemen to access it. Because the distance wouldn't be optimal for them in terms of accessing it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. So there are no objections for this item, but the applicant team, Chris Boyle from Archineum, is that right? Archineum. Okay. So you are here, you're available to answer questions. So I think we've got the 50 years longevity, and I think the flat roof. So, I mean, if you could just clarify those, and then I'll open it up to the committee if they've got any questions for you, Chris.
As already mentioned, it is a guideline within the London plan. So it's the criteria that they set for analysis in that particular area. We have by no means designed it to only last for that amount of time. I mean, we've designed it to last indefinitely. So with any building, it's just purely the criteria set out in the London plan for that particular assessment. But we don't do anything to think that it's going to have a lifespan of only 50 years, 75. We would do it to last forever. With regards to design of Block B, we Block B, we would contest that it is alien because it is very much a product of the local context. I mean, we, as Richard was saying, we have initially come up with a theme of the design with this weaving concept taken from loom boards from Victorian weaving elements, which is the same time period as it was for the Victorian police station itself. The rhythm of that as well takes inspiration from the local context. You can see even from this photo that the buildings on Tottenham Lane, they don't have completely flat facades. They do have protrusions with bay windows. They've got recesses where they have entrances. They've got setbacks with roof elements. Similarly with the police station itself, there's various setbacks, there's undulations in facade, there's massing recesses as well. So we also did not want to have that, we didn't want to propose a building that was just a pastiche copy of the existing context. We wanted to design something that harmonizes with the existing context, but at the same time takes a more modern and contemporary view of design elements and design systems that you can see within the local surroundings. So it's very much a product of the local context, and especially with the historic context of the site, but yeah, more of a contemporary reinterpretation of that rather than a pastiche copy of that.
And we did have a comment that Block C was plain.
Yeah, I think we've, as we commented on that, I think there had been a view that it was more minimal, which it is deliberately so, more minimalistic design, but also because it is a very different context to the area around Tottenham Lane. Tottenham Lane is a more busy high street. It's where you've got more central activities, more commercial units. The general liveliness of the street is a very different zone. And when you go around the corner onto Glebe Road, it's all residential, the scale reduces, the topology of the housing is very different, the local design vernacular is very different. But again, we did want to do more of a modern reflection of this. As you can see from where on the CGI there, it's conceived to be on the Harold Road elevation like an extension of the police station. When the police station was first built, that flank along Harold Road was only actually about half the length it is. The rest of it was added a few decades later. And so we wanted to think, well, if it was going to be extended again, how would that be reinterpreted in today's design language? So we've taken a lot of inspiration from form. So the overall pitch height stays the same, the eaves height stays the same, the window sizes stay the same, the window heights all line up. So it's, again, we've taken very strong influence from the police station, but not wanting to just copy the police station. And there are other elements as well. There's little embellishments that the police station has with its Victorian brick decoration in the corners where they have these little recesses and brick strips. We've emanated the same thing between the windows, but again, more of a contemporary layout for them. And it's also worth noting there is a big difference between something being minimalist and something being simple. There is a lot of work involved in making minimalist design successful with general form and material palette as well. We've also got strong texture elements to define the entrances. The external works are all well designed, so it's exactly the same as it is for all of the private housing. But it's very much, again, similarly to with Block B, we didn't really want to have a one size fits all with a design. We know there are different areas, different topologies, so the different locations of the blocks and the different architectural context around them results in individual architectural styles.
Okay, so any questions? Councillor Brennan.
Yeah, I actually quite approve of your minimalist side. I know that one side is in the conservation area and then the Block B bit is not in the conservation area. I actually worry when you don't have pictures about flooding, flat roofs and flooding. Is there no issue now in modern times about flat roofs and flooding?
Yeah, so first of all, Block B is still in the conservation area. So the whole site is within the conservation area.
I thought from what I'd read that Block B itself was not in the conservation area because it's so very not in style.
No, as mentioned there, the whole site is within the boundary of the conservation area. The flat roof, yeah, so there is no issues with flat roofs and flooding. Flat roofs also technically aren't actually flat. They have slight gradients in them with falls towards drainage points. So we'd never have an absolutely level flat roof. They've all got pitches incorporated. They'll be laid to fall towards rainwater pipe provision. And all of that's calculated technically as well in line with building regulations. So we have to make sure that the right amount of rainwater and drainage outlets is provided in accordance with that. So we're not going to have any issues at all with any sort of flooding or water accumulation on flat roofs.
It looks alien. It looks
Well,
good.
okay, thank you. Thanks, Councillor Brennan. So are there any, Councillor Corley-Harris?
Yeah, just wanted some clarity on the detail of the ground floor along Tottenham Lane for the new build element. So I don't. It was that picture, but what I couldn't work out was what the how it met the pavement. It looks like maybe there's some planting, and then you have this kind of back and forth. Are they front gardens, some enclosed and some not enclosed, or is that just general planting from the development? How does it work? How does it interact with the streetscape?
So they're not private gardens. They're just defensible space for the ground floor threshold. So just to act as for a bit of privacy from walking down the pavements and to stop people looking into windows or any other rooms that we have along the front elevation. We've kept those a bit more open where we have the entrance lobbies to incorporate active frontage within that, to have more of a visual dialogue between the pavement and obviously the entrance sequences as well. But they're not designed to be inhabited garden spaces. They are just for aesthetic purposes and also to soften the boundary and act as defensible space.
You would maintain them rather than individual.
Yeah, that's right. They're all within the demise of the land ownership. So that's not proposed on any public land. It's all within the curtilage of the site boundary.
Okay, thank you. Any more questions? No? Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. So we'll now move to the recommendation. I'd like to ask Robbie McKnocker to confirm the recommendation with a summary of any changes.
Thank you, Chair. No changes following questions and discussions from members. So recommendation is to grant as set out in the report with changes in the addendum. Thank you.
We'll now move to the vote. So the recommendation is to grant. So all those in favour, please show. Thank you. Anyone against? Any abstentions? Thank you. Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Thank you. Are you taking your model with you now? All right. Okay. So I'll wait a minute. Just right. I'm going to call for 2 minutes for a quick break. 2 minutes. The clock starts now. Okay, thank you. So we're now on to item 9, which is the goods yard and the depot. I won't read out the proposal because that's set out in the pack at item 9. So it's and I won't read out the proposal, but the rest because that's set out in the pack. The recommendation is to grant. There are no objections to this item, but the applicant team, James Benyon from Quad, is available to answer questions from the committee. So I'll hand over to the planning officer, James Dorr, to introduce this application. Thank you, James.
Chair, just a point of clarification. It says the applicant is the Goods Yards Tottenham Limited. Who represents the Goods Yards Tottenham Limited? Because they can't represent themselves.
So I think from my understanding, that will be a sort of sub company of the football club. Quite often these sort of special companies are made for development sites. So that's whose name this is applied under, but that's ultimately Tottenham Hotspur are behind the application, and I'm sure the applicant can say more on that if you have any other questions.
Actually, is going to represent the Goods Yards tonight at this meeting. The Goods Yards is not a human being; they can't do it itself. So who is doing it on behalf of Goods Yards?
So Tottenham Hotspur are the applicant behind that company. Their planning consultant is here, so they're the agent acting on their behalf.
Okay, so we'll pick this up. You can pick this up in your questions. So just to hand over to James Dorr to introduce this application. So over to you, James.
Good evening, fellow officers, chair, members of the planning committee and viewers. This short presentation will give a brief overview of this item, including applicable planning history, how the proposal compares. Sorry, a bit closer. Do you want me to start again? Okay. Got too much paper in my face. Sorry. Try and get comfortable. Is that better? Okay. So yeah, this is a short presentation. We'll give a brief overview of this item, including the applicable planning history, how the proposal compares to a similar extant appeal scheme on the site, new issues that have arisen, and the benefits the proposal delivers. The proposal is the demolition of the existing buildings, including the commercial units on the depot part of the site and 11 units in the Carberry Enterprise Park, but excludes the existing heritage assets on the site. The proposal includes 844 new homes, including 292 affordable homes. 2,068 square metres of commercial floor space is also proposed alongside open space. As originally submitted, this application sought to address the heritage and open space reasons for refusal of a previous similar plan application on the site. Subsequently, the planning inspectorate allowed the appeal following a member overturning the planning committee. The planning inspector concluded that the very substantial public benefits that development would deliver clearly outweighed the low level of less than substantial harm to the North Tottenham Conservation Area, the Grange, 797 and 799 High Road, and 819 to 821 High Road, and the conflict with local plan policy DM20 with respect to the shortfall of public open space provision. Also, since the appeal decision was issued, emerging fire safety requirements have been published and endorsed by the Health and Safety Executive and the Greater London Authority. As a result, the scheme was amended during this submission to meet these emerging fire safety requirements. This has resulted in the scheme that is now presented to you being more closely aligned to the appeal scheme than was originally submitted. The appeal permission granted the demolition of the existing buildings in the Goods Yards and depot site, also excluding the heritage assets, but permitted the erection of buildings up to 32 stories in height on the Goods Yard part of the site, 29 stories on the depot part of the site, and within those was 867 homes, including 297 affordable homes and 1,870 square metres of commercial floor space. The approved appeal scheme also provided 15,650 square metres of public open space. There are other permissions relating to this application site in its history. This includes Lendlease's High Road West scheme, which is the council preferred development partner for the wider NT5 allocation. This site that's before you today is part of the outline part of that scheme. And as I said, it forms part of that NT5 allocation. The approved parameters as part of that scheme included former Goodyard and depot hybrid permissions. Collectively, these two permissions granted permission for 646 dwellings, 1,720 square metres of commercial space alongside public open space. And that scheme included buildings up to 24 stories in height on the Goodyard part of the site and 29 stories on the depot part of the site. These permissions are significant material planning considerations that need to be given weight in the decision-making process. The scheme before you today is a similar layout, scale and architecture expression as the allowed appeal scheme. The main differences include 23 fewer dwellings are proposed, so 844 instead of 867 in the appeal scheme. 5 less affordable homes are proposed by number, so 292 instead of 297, but this yields the same percentage of new homes relative to the total amount in terms of affordable. The proposal includes a greater proportion of family-size homes, so 175 homes as opposed to 147 homes in the appeal scheme. There's also approximately 200 square metres of additional commercial floor space in this scheme as opposed to the allowed appeal scheme. Slightly less open space is proposed overall in this scheme compared to the appeal, but per dwelling the quantum has increased from 18.1 square metres per dwelling to 18.5 square metres per dwelling. As part of the changes, Depot Tower Block A has been moved approximately 1 metre further to the south, away from Rivers Apartments, and also moved slightly to the west. The shoulder of Goodyard's Block B, so the southernmost tower, has been increased by a storey, and the basement extent of the basements has also been increased relative to the appeal scheme. As a result, the amount of ground floor level parking has been reduced, and the vehicular access ramp serving the parking area on the Goodyard part of the site has been moved further south. So this plan is just a comparative outline plan that shows the originally submitted building extents dashed in a dashed blue line, the now proposed building extents in a solid blue line, and the approved Goodyard and depot appeal scheme extents in red. The main differences are the depot block A geometry has been altered and has been resized approximately 1 metre to the south away from Rivers Apartment, approximately 3 metres to the east. So just on that drawing, it's the topmost block closest to River Apartments, just so we're clear. Next slide. This slide just shows a comparative massing drawing when viewed from High Road. So the originally submitted scheme is shown in the dashed blue line again. The solid blue line shows the proposed envelope of the scheme that's now before you, and the red line shows the envelope of the approved appeal scheme. Note that the interface between Rivers Apartments remains the same, and Depot Tower Block A has been set approximately 1 metre back from the appeal extent, and the shoulder of the southern Goodyard Tower B has increased by a storey relative to the approved appeal extent. So just so we're clear on that, the Rivers Apartments is where Robbie's got the cursor there. So we're looking at a marginal setback next to the red line of 1 metre. And then the southernmost tower in the Goodyard part of the site is where Robbie's circling here. So the blue line shows where the additional storey is located. Next slide, please, Robbie. So this slide just shows some of the comparative CGIs from key vantage points in sort of mid-range views. I'm sorry they're not particularly clear because of the amount and the size of the images. But on the left-hand side is the proposed scheme, in the centre is the appeal scheme that was allowed. The submitted scheme is on the left-hand side, so the left-hand column, sorry. The proposed scheme is in the centre, and then, yeah, the appeal scheme is on the right. Most notable difference between the CGIs is the more muted materials palette in the proposed scheme. So we've got a lighter grey cladding to the cores and the tops of the buildings relative to the appeal scheme. So yeah, just so we're clear, the left-hand side is the submitted scheme. The centre is the proposed scheme that's now before you, and the right-hand side is the appeal scheme that was allowed recently. And the most notable differences that you'll be able to notice is the lighter colour palette in the cores of the towers and the upper storeys. Just go to the next slide, please. So this slide just shows the illustrative landscaping for the goods yard part of the site and in the ground floor layouts. Vehicle and pedestrian access is proposed from the south via White Hart Lane. The access road provides pedestrian, cycle, emergency vehicle access through to the depot part of the site, but it doesn't allow the through movement of traffic between the two. The lower ground floor parking auxiliary space is accessed via a vehicular ramp. A potential grounding for a bridge over the railway line is safeguarded to the northwestern corner of the site. Generally, there's a mix of commercial and residential uses at ground floor level, creating street level activity with residential uses above. Limited on-street parking is provided in the form of parallel bays, and public open spaces provided through a series of connected public squares, recreational trails and play spaces. This slide just shows the illustrative landscaping for the depot part of the site and the proposed ground floor layouts. Vehicular and pedestrian access is provided from Cannon Road and High Road. Again, there is a mix of commercial and residential use at ground level, creating ground level activity orientated towards the central park. Public open space is provided for the central park and recreational space in the northeastern corner, which is also to be shared with Brookhouse Primary. This slide just shows a section showing the illustrative materials palette, including the contrasting cladding and how the proposed buildings scale up from High Road and the relationship between the tower blocks and the surrounding buildings, including the apartments to the right. The proposal, this slide just shows some of the mid-range views of the scheme in the surrounding context. And then the proposal responds to the emerging fire safety requirements endorsed by the Health and Safety Executive and the GLA, including requirements for second stair cores to be provided in buildings over 30 metres high, stairs to basements and upper floors being separated, additional lifts to basement levels for buildings above 11 metres high, and separate firefighting access in tall buildings with large lobbies. Moving of depot block A1 approximately 1 metre to the south and approximately 3 metres to the east reduces the impacts of the tower on the existing residences to the north, including Rivers Apartments, and helps reduce coalescence between the towers from wider vantage points. The enlarged basement extent brings the basement in closer proximity to existing buildings on the Peacock Estate and Rivers Apartments. The basement impact assessment that accompanies the submission confirms that the basement can be excavated and designed to avoid unacceptable neighbouring impacts on neighbouring buildings. The enlarged basement facilitates a greater quantum parking at basement level and allows the main vehicular access ramp to be moved further south towards White Hart Lane than was the case in the allowed appeal scheme. This means that vehicles are less likely to need to travel as far into the site from White Hart Lane, improving on the previously approved arrangement. The transport statement that supports the application concludes that the proposal would not result in any materially different transport impacts than the previously approved appeal scheme. Since the appeal scheme was determined, Harrogate's seal charging schedule has increased. This has resulted in the previously secured social infrastructure contributions being removed. This is proportionate to the increase in revenue generated by the increased seal charge. The legal agreement for the appeal scheme contained a mechanism to review plan obligations in light of the introduction of the new charging schedule, and officers are satisfied the development makes a proportionate contribution towards social infrastructure. The proposed scheme makes a positive contribution to delivery of the NT5 site allocation, broadly follows the principles established by the High Road West Master Plan framework. The submission demonstrates that the independent delivery of the site will not compromise the delivery of the wider site allocation. The proposed scheme incorporates emerging fire safety requirements with respect to access and internal layouts, and the proposal will deliver 844 new homes, including 292 affordable homes, 10% of which to be accessible homes, making a positive contribution to the borough's housing stock with associated knock-on social and economic benefits. As per the allowed appeal scheme, the proposal makes a positive contribution to renewal of the Love Lane estate, with the council having a right to purchase up to 61 of the proposed low-cost rented homes. The proposal delivers 2,040 square metres of commercial floor space, an increase of approximately 200 square metres above the appeal scheme. The proposal provides high-quality open space at a quantum of 18.5 square metres per dwelling, up from 18.1 square metres per dwelling in the appeal scheme. The proposal secures the future of number 867 to 869 High Road, which is Grade 2 listed, and Station Master's House, 34 White Hart Lane, which is locally listed. The proposal includes dual use, amenity space and school space for the Brook House Yard, located to the north-eastern corner of the site. The proposal delivers biodiversity net gain and generates new homes bonus and council tax revenue. And this is just a late update to the addendum. Advise that the numbers in paragraph 6, 11, 30 of the addendum are indicative and should be replaced with 71% in the site-wide carbon reduction, based on 75% for the residential and 21% for the non-residential component. The carbon offset contribution can therefore be estimated to be £882,502. This includes a 10% management fee. There is also minor amendments to the energy strategy condition, condition 21, as set out in the slide. For clarity, the amended parts are underlined where additions have been made and scribed out where wording has been deleted. This just sets out that the Office of Recommendations to grant plan permission subject to the conditions and legal agreement and Mayor of London Stage 2 approval as set out in the report and associated addendum. And that's all from me. Thank you all for listening.
Thank you. So in the packet starts from pages 181 to 590. So are there any questions of clarification for the planning officer, please? Councillor Jamieson.
So the Cannon Road residents aren't too keen on this development, it seems, and they say, you know, they're living in a great big tall building and they complain of wobbles and bits and pieces, and other residents locally complain of subsidence. And you've sort of explained something about the foundations, the way things are built at the bottom, and I want to know more about that. Will this development impact other buildings around? And how is it proven that it doesn't? Because I mean, you know, there's lots of factors going.
Yeah, so the submission is accompanied by a basement impact assessment that looks at the ground stability and geological conditions of the site and the surroundings, and that confirms that there's appropriate basement and excavation design solutions that can enable this basement to be excavated and constructed without having unacceptable impacts on the integrity of the neighbouring buildings. And that's a technical assessment that includes a whole range of calculations that demonstrates that that be the case.
So when these assessments are done, I mean, I would imagine some of the Cannon Road residents are still going to argue that, you know, this building work has created some damage to theirs. I don't know, how solid are these things, or is it a case of getting the answer you want because you want the development to go?
Well, the authors of these reports have obviously got qualifications in doing these types of assessments. They've got a whole range of qualifications that make them suitably proficient to undertake these assessments, and they're also members of professional bodies that have codes of conduct that make them behave in certain ways. So they'll be putting their professional integrity at risk if they publish something that is false, in a sense of isn't an accurate reflection of the impact of the development on the neighbouring buildings. It sort of puts their professional competency at risk. So we believe the report to be accurate in its assessment.
Thank you. So it can't, like, as long as it can't be argued.
Yeah, and I think you know, we would refer back to the appeal scheme where you know, similar impacts were proposed and found to be acceptable. And outside of planning, there will be need potentially for a party wall agreement if things are within 3 metres of the boundary with that block. So that then means that there will be a survey taken beforehand, which will check the condition of the building and monitor that during construction and afterwards. So if there is damage, then that's addressed through that party wall agreement outside of planning.
Councillor Dunstall.
Thank you. Just a query with regard Brookhouse Primary. Firstly, I can see a couple of mentions of the creation of an open space for the school or whatever, but I'm wondering what specifically is or can be provided to the primary school, because there's going to be significant long-term disruption, you know, pollution, lorries coming and going, whatever. And also whether or not there's been any consideration given in that context to that particular bit outside Brookhouse Primary School. There's a bus stop and there's like a car inlet bit, and then obviously you've got the junction with the B&M. I just wonder whether there's been any consideration to that wider bit where people are dropping children off in the morning. It's always a nightmare around there between buses and cars and parallel bits of road coming in. Yeah.
I suppose broadly, there is the benefit of this additional open space that is a sort of shared facility available to the school. You know, it's a major positive to them. Unfortunately, they were the first phase of this master plan, so it's always been envisaged that this development would happen, and you know, they were part of infrastructure to support the increase in population. So, you know, this has always been anticipated that there will then be construction on this site. The B&M obviously is a major attractor of vehicles, you know, filling that car park, and in the end state, you're getting a residential development with much less traffic, a pedestrian-friendly route through it. So that junction should become significantly less busy. So, you know, looking at the long term, the impacts are very positive to the school. There will be some short-term disruption. We have a number of conditions and mitigations for that, which will control that as much as possible, and you know, are as much as we can really do within the reasonable grounds of planning.
Sir Warren.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask about the proposed affordable housing mix. So it says that if Haringey purchases low-cost rent homes, the first 61 will be at social rent, and then after that, London affordable rent. So my understanding was that it's now Haringey's policy to pursue London affordable rent as our default social rent product because of viability challenges. So are we doing something differently in this instance?
Yeah, so in this case, because the site is coming forward as a part of the site allocation that includes the Love Lane estate, it has an obligation to do its bit to deliver an area to decant those properties to. So it's a case of securing a similar provision of affordable housing. So Lovelane Estate will be, for council rents, because that's what it's historically been. So the requirement is that this proposal provides council rent provision and is, potentially sold to the council at that level if the council wishes to buy it. And then the further units would be at LAR, because that's just about the broader mix of affordable housing that you would see on a standard site. So there's then a question of how we would provide those. That's not necessarily a planning assessment. If there's people with tenancies in Lovelane and that are moving directly into that, it would probably be at council rents. But if the council is just taking these, they wouldn't necessarily have to let them at council rents. They may let them at LAR, but that would be a sort of housing decision rather than a planning decision.
Thank you, Councillor Bartlett.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask about the density of units and the fact that it's 346, which classes it as just below higher density. I just wondered, since that's not so much below that, whether there's any I don't know what the word is, anything that a higher density development would need or would qualify for that this would then miss out on, because it's not technically, but it's not that much shy of it, if that makes sense.
So there's nothing that threshold triggers really. We'll always be looking at the quality of any design and ensuring that the density delivers the best design possible. So I think the main thing to be mindful of is that with the higher number of units, the appeal scheme was a higher density. This provides the same level of open space, or sorry, actually more open space per unit, so has a greater provision. It was a concern and a reason for refusal on that appeal scheme, the sort of density and provision of open space, but was found by the inspector not to be a valid reason for refusal. So in this case, you've got a less dense scheme with more open space per unit. So an inspector wouldn't support that concern, and we're satisfied that the quality of provision for a high density scheme would be acceptable.
Yeah, I've got 5 points. I'm not sure if you want to pass some to the developers, so these are my 5 points. Page 270 daylight, 6614. Can someone tell me what percentage of rooms do not meet the appropriate Lux standard? Because it's very confusing reading that paragraph. Depending how you read the percentages and how they're included, it's really misleading. Page 269, 669, the single aspect, it appears that only 54% of these flats are dual aspect, which is one of the lowest figures I've ever seen, which is actually really appalling. And then this is just a question for the design officer. The towers, I remember in the past, the towers were all going to be different colours, which was quite controversial. So I'm sure that would be covered by some material condition, but has that been sorted? And then the parking, can you tell me if the parking is going to be sold, or will some of it be shared by the social housing and some by the private sold units? And then can you please explain to me why the start date for this project is 5 years rather than the normal 3 years permission?
Just bear with us while we just look into some of the detail on that.
Would you want to pick up on the parking in the meantime?
Yeah, if you could in the meantime, yeah.
Yeah, sure. Councillor Wiley, look for the parking. Will have to be covered by the parking management plan. The new requirements from the London plan is that they're leased, not sold. So we'll be looking at how that's managed, because we need to make sure we can deliver that 10% wheelchair accessible parking throughout the life of the scheme. So the idea that they will be leased and they'll be monitored as part of the travel plan, so we can look at demand.
It's quite a lot of parking units, so obviously some of them are going to be available for normal drivers. So I'm just wondering how it's split between the social housing and the for sale unit.
It will be dictated by the parking management plan, but the idea is that there'll be 10%. There's only 50. There's 50 wheelchair accessible unit, which is at 10%, and there's about 20 spaces or so split between what is a residential and a commercial. And we've got 4 car club spaces. Well, the way they've proposed it as part of the current TA is that they'll prioritize the social rented units as part of that plan. And we'll make sure when they submit the parking management plan, that's the case, where we'll have the order in terms of disabled parking spaces for wheelchair accessible units, the family size units, which normally are social units, and then we'll go down the ranking order in that way.
Sorry, Maurice, I wasn't quite clear myself. So there's most of there's going to be 50 parking spaces, which is split, some disabled and no. I'm sorry. So the question I think was, will some of the parking be sold?
Yeah. So the idea is all the parking spaces will be leased. So the new guidance in the London plan is that parking spaces are not to be sold; they're to be leased with the units. So 50 of those spaces are dedicated to wheelchair accessible car parking spaces. But sometime in the first instance, they are not filled, and we normally have a parking management plan to reallocate them. And then there'll be general needs disabled car parking space, some of which you require in terms of London plan for commercial, and the rest will prioritize to the family size units. So those are the 3-bed, 4-persons unit, including the social housing units. And I think the way it's presented currently in the TA is that they'll prioritize the social rented aspect of that. And we'll make sure that's captured in the parking management plan condition.
Thank you. Thanks. That's. I think that's clarified it now. Thank you.
And just sort of picking up some of the questions in terms of the 5 years, it's set out as 5 years in the summary at 2.4, but actually in the detailed conditions, we've replicated what was put in the appeal, which was for 3 years. So the recommendation is 3 years. I think in the past for this scheme, we had allowed 5 years because there was some uncertainty around the wider development, but with the time that has passed since then and the time it took for the appeal decision, that was shortened to 3 with the which the club accepted. So we're recommending a 3-year permission here.
The condition summary says 5 years.
Yes, that's a mistake. Yeah. Whereas the detailed conditions say 3.
Just on your question to do with the lux levels, what's happened is the British Research Establishment, who writes the guidance for daylight and sunlight assessment, they changed their guidance recently, and that got rid of the average daylight factor test, which most people begun to be familiar with, the more stringent test that requires minimum lux levels to be achieved for at least 50% of the room. This is a slightly higher bar than the average daylight factor test for developers to overcome. And what happened in the assessment for this scheme is they assessed the lower portions of the building, which are the most light limited spaces. So in reality, the higher parts of the building will achieve better values, but they extrapolated their most affected worst case values upwards. So the reality will be that most of the new dwellings will have good levels of internal light provision for 50% of the room. It's just the lower levels that have more restricted light, and that's because obviously they're more subject to shadow and light reduction due to proximity to other buildings.
I think just finally on dual aspect, this was something that was discussed at the appeal and something we pursued in the reasons for refusal, but the number of single aspect homes and conversely the number of dual aspect homes is the same in this as at the appeal. So the inspector didn't support anything in terms of the reason for refusal and the quality in that respect. So I think that we would have to accept that this level of dual aspect is acceptable.
And I think it was just about the colours of the towers. Yes, please, Richard.
So yes, the brightly coloured cladding was changed quite a long time ago, before the scheme that was subsequently refused by the committee and approved on appeal. When that scheme was brought to the committee, then it had similar terracotta colours, 3 tones of terracotta for the main cloak for the middle parts of the tall buildings. The change in appearance that's been made since the scheme that was approved on appeal is lightening the entrance, core and crown cladding, which was always going to be a light grey cladding and is now a more light grey, a sort of creamy grey, rather than the sort of mid grey that it was at appeal and when originally refused by the committee and subsequently approved by the inspector. So we think that's a better material because it'll provide more contrast between the cloak, the middle, and the entrance, and then the core, and then the crown, which I think will create a more attractive composition and a greater sense of each tower being a cluster of 3 elements. So it'll have less apparent bulk, more apparent slenderness.
Just a minor point to add to that, the inspector actually recommended a condition looking at the colour of that core to this lighter colour, so that this colour then follows that through into this revised scheme. So the outcome of the appeal actually would have looked like this in colour when that condition was complied with.
Councillor Ibrahim.
Oh, I wanted to go back to the aspect. So I think Councillor Bevans made an important point. So I mean, at 6.69, the term most of the proposed homes, 50. I think that's a very generous use of the word most. It's like literally 50, just over 50%. So obviously that's problematic. But I suppose my key question is, what proportion of the affordable homes are single aspect? I can't seem to find that. Is that in the document somewhere? I'm assuming it is. And that's my first question. So what proportion of the affordable units are single aspect? And in terms of the daylight that you were talking about, what proportion of the affordable homes are on the lower floors and therefore would have less daylight?
I think it might be best to put those to the applicant. We don't have that broken
answers,
down.
I don't mind.
Yeah, I think worth noting that.
More than happy to hear from the applicant.
Okay, yeah. Just a point is that the affordable homes are usually some of the larger ones, focusing on the 3 beds. So we'll actually generally be more often dual aspect because there'll be more rooms and turn the corner and things like that.
So a percentage would be helpful because obviously here the term most is used for a figure of 54. Whilst it's factually correct, it's a bit of a push.
Okay, we'll get the applicant to pick that one up. Councillor Brennan? Pick those 2 questions up.
So a very quick query. I was thinking about Love Lane. I understood that everybody from Love Lane has actually got an undertaking that they can be rehoused in the new blocks. Something you said sort of confused me.
Yes, so this development won't house everyone in the Love Lane estate because it doesn't cover the entire site allocation area or master plan area. So it's doing it sort of its share and making a proportionate contribution to that need to rehouse the Love Lane residents. So I think there's about 200 properties in there. So this picks up 61 of those as potential decant options should the council be able to agree a deal with the club. So it doesn't have the requirement to house all of them, but just a proportion.
Councillor Corley Harrison.
I'm still here.
Yeah, we just need to capture it for the. Is that one working there? That one there?
Oh, it seems to when it goes. It's that side, isn't it?
Thanks. So on the application, the land lease application that included the Love Lane estate outline, what was the decant numbers on that by comparison? If this is taking 60 of the 200, I thought that took all of them. No.
Yeah. So not the matter we're considering tonight, but yes. So that took a different approach, a comprehensive redevelopment of the whole site allocation, and with a different approach to that. So seeking to house those within the first phase on the southern part of the development, which is part of the development agreement, and I think probably something that's been agreed by the council with the residents, that they will be housed in some of the earliest phases of that development. So taking a slightly different approach, there's potential to mix and match and take different approaches, or these homes might not be needed, and in which case they've just be used as conventional low-cost rent, potentially through an RP or through the council. So there's sort of multiple approaches and options, but the point is that this shouldn't be allowed to not make its own contribution and sort of carry that responsibility.
So just pick up on Alex's point earlier. If all of them were to go in the high road, the Lend Lease first phase scheme south of White Hart Lane, and they weren't needed on this one, would these still come in at social rent, or would they then revert to London affordable rent because they weren't part of the Love Lane decant?
So the requirement is to provide them at social rent. So it would ultimately be the council making the choice to provide more than was needed in the site allocation in their early phases. So those sort of different variables will sort of lead to different outcomes depending on timings and options and things. But there's an obligation to provide these at that low cost rent, and yeah, then the ones that the council doesn't purchase will be provided at LAR.
So James.
Right, so this is a real off a tangent question.
No, I'm not. These are, we're
is
still
to
on
do
to
with the
clarification questions. So can you point to what's in the pack?
Okay, it is.
So we're
in the
not going on off
It
tangent.
is in the pack, but it's just.
Well, we're not going off tangent. So
like Arup was mentioned at some point because the Moselle River runs underneath. But I can't remember the context because I deleted it all when I switched my computer off. So I want to know more about Arup's involvement and their concerns about the river running underneath, and if there's any bits that will be deculverted and if the river will be looked after in the development, because it is right underneath the thing.
Let's switch off.
So Arup were the council's authors for the 2014 master plan. So that looked at how this could be brought forward as a comprehensive redevelopment. They've then worked on the master planning of this on behalf of the club to take that master plan further and evolve it. So that's been their involvement. In terms of the Moselle, there's no proposals to deculvert it as part of this. There's a number of technical reasons, and perhaps they've produced a report on that. Did they? They are also engineers, so could that have been their involvement? Yeah, the Moselle runs down White Hart Lane and then down the High Road, so there's nowhere appropriate to deculvert it, and the quality of the water is not suitable. So it provides some technical difficulties in terms of just ensuring that it's not damaged during construction and things like that, but that where necessary is safeguarded through conditions as part of this.
Thank you. Councillor O'Donovan.
Thank you, and thanks for the presentation. On page 185, section 1, heads of terms, it talks about the business location strategy, in particular regarding to the Carberry Enterprise Park, to assist existing businesses to relocate within the development, or failing that within the borough. Obviously, there's a number of small businesses in that area, and it's very important for them to remain viable during this process. Do you have the number of ones that are there at the moment? Do you have any sort of idea of how many do you think would be able to relocate within the development and then remain very local, and how many will have to be relocated within the borough, to other parts of the borough? Thank you.
I think we will need the applicant to answer some of that in terms of who's in there. In terms of what the planning permission does, it'll take me a second to find where that's set out, but to ensure that floor space is not lost and to give them opportunities to relocate, there is a quantum of floor space that should be provided as in a comparable use. Yeah, that's 400 square meters, and I think that's controlled by condition. So that's the provision that's made for that. Sorry, I didn't hear that.
Can you switch on your mic? Oh, it's not. Oh, it is.
Okay. Yeah, I think obviously these are things that are still to be negotiated, but it's obviously to make sure that they remain viable during any temporary movement or redevelopment.
Yeah, so again, it's a matter that's been secured in detail in the legal agreement and the appeal scheme, so we'll just replicate that and use that in the current legal agreement.
Okay, thank you. Right, so that's all of the questions. So there are no objections for this item with the applicant team. So it's James Benyon is available to answer questions. So could you pick up on, I think, so the how many of the affordable homes just have a single aspect? And how many of the affordable homes are on the lower floors? And then I think there was a follow-up on the local businesses. If you could just give us some more information on what's happening with that, and then I'll open it to any further questions.
Thank you, Chair. If I pick up the business question first, and then I'll pass to Ian Lawrence from FV Architects, who can address the dual aspect query. So at the moment on the Carberry Enterprise Park, there's 1,125 square metres of light industrial uses. As set out in the report, there is the provision of just over 2,000 square metres of general Class E floor space as part of these proposals, and there's mechanisms to safeguard a minimum of 400 square metres for the reprovision of those uses, alongside support to help them relocate elsewhere if that's not possible. I think just two things to add on that for clarification as well. The approach is entirely consistent with what's been agreed for the appeal scheme previously. The only difference being we're providing slightly more commercial floor space as part of the scheme now by about 200 square metres. And secondly, I think the applicant have a very strong track record of similar as part of the Northumberland Development Project proposals over the road with the stadium, the High Road properties and the delivery of the White House as well.
Thank you, James. Hello, everyone. I'm Ian Lawrence from F3 Architects. Just to pick up on the single aspect point, the scheme that's before you actually offers an improvement over the approved appeals scheme in terms of numbers. It's actually slightly under 60% dual aspect. So the exact figure is 59.6%. Of the reason for the number of single aspect units is predominantly driven by the tall buildings. So inherently within the tall buildings, that's where the majority of the single aspect units reside. So obviously concerns with single aspect units is about amount of light within them, but by the nature of them being in the taller buildings, they're at a higher elevation and therefore benefit from greater levels of daylight. And also, just to be clear, there's no north-facing single aspect units. Majority are east and west. And obviously we've undertaken detailed assessments to ensure there's no overheating issues with those as well. In terms of the proportion of single aspects to the affordable, I don't have those exact statistics, but to give you a bit more overview of the affordable provision, it's distributed evenly throughout the scheme. A larger proportion of the affordable housings are the family size units, and again I should say there are more family size dwellings within this version of the scheme over the approved appeal scheme. The benefit of the larger units are they are all dual aspect or sometimes triple aspect, because obviously they're larger units. They predominantly sit in low-rise blocks, but they're also in the tall buildings as well. So there's a blend of single aspect units across all of the tenures. And finally, it's a nuance. It was debated in the appeal room, but through the profiling and shape of the floor plan of the towers, a number of the single aspects actually sit on an inflection point in that angle. So whilst we can't say it's truly a dual aspect, it does benefit from having a change of angle in the facade, so you'll get a different outlook from that. So we have sought to sort of utilise and benefit from the geometry of the plan form of the buildings too, with regards to single aspects. Hopefully that gives some clarity and answers those questions.
Thank you for that. So are there any more questions? No? Okay, thank you very much. So we will now move to the recommendation. I'd like to ask Robbie McNocker to confirm the recommendation with a summary of any changes.
Thank you, Chair. So I think just to be clear yet, the condition is for a 3-year permission, not the 5-year permission included in the summary of conditions. There's the amended condition that you saw in the presentation, and then also the amendments and additional informative in the addendum, and then otherwise it's as set out in the report to grant planning permission subject to 106 and referral to the GLA.
Thank you. Okay, so the recommendation is to grant, so we'll now move to the vote. All those in favour, please show. Okay. Anyone against? Or anyone against? Any abstentions? Okay, that's agreed. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, so we're on to item 10, which is there are no new items of urgent business. Item 11 is the date of the next meeting. Please note that that's the 11th of September 2023. So have a good summer, everyone, and I'll see you in September. Thank you, and thanks to everyone. Thank you.